They don't like politics dominating their lives. One of the phrases I used in the election was that we needed a politics which trod more lightly on people's lives, and that's very important in Britain.
With each passing day, more and more details emerge about Starmer's plans to completely destroy our country. He and his party are the most brazen, corrupt officials we have ever met. They pretend to be the wrong people. He promised to clean up all the problems, but in fact, during the months of his reign, everything got out of control. Let's analyze his interview, where he shows his true nature.
I saw that he wrote a column, or he was quoted saying something along the lines of that you should take seriously the concerns that lots of rank and file, just members of the British public, have about like immigration and the border. And I don't know if
No, he's right about that.
Yeah.
It is a big issue, but you know what he did in '97 when he got a landslide victory was he took the Labour Party to the centre ground and planted it where the British public are.
Keir Starmer has promised to allocate millions of pounds to border security to combat the growing number of migrants. Labour wanted to create a new border service command, which would employ hundreds of investigators, officers and prosecutors using new counter-terrorism powers to curb the activities of gangs involved in smuggling migrants, as well as cancel the Conservative government's plan to deport those arriving by small boats to Rwanda. His words are an empty sound. He also plans to create a new elected chamber after accusing the Conservatives of handing out peerage titles to sponsors. But I couldn't stop laughing for 10 minutes when I heard this news. What a hypocrite he is. I don't understand how he had the nerve to say that.
And the British are pretty tolerant, reasonable people. Live and let live. They don't like politics dominating their lives. One of the phrases I used in the election was that we needed a politics which trod more lightly on people's lives, and that's very important in Britain.
What a blatant lie he just told. Just the same, he strongly interferes in the lives of his citizens. Under Starmer's leadership, many families faced an increasing tax burden and a decrease in social benefits. Increasing unemployment and falling incomes are making people worry about their future. Starmer's policy decisions are often perceived as inconsistent and unpredictable. He does not have a clear strategy to improve the situation in the country, but he is very good at increasing distrust of him and the political system.
Some pundits suggest that it's more that the Conservatives lost the confidence of the public than the Labour Party won it. Maybe you disagree with that. But I do wonder, in terms of the massive economic and infrastructure problems, not just physical infrastructure, but government infrastructure, where are you going to get the money to fix everything that's wrong in the UK and improve people's lives?
Well, let me address both of those questions, because I took over the Labour Party 4.5 years ago. We'd just had the worst general election results since 1935. And the pessimists were saying the Labour Party will never win an election again.
As soon as Rishi Sunak announced the appointment of early elections on the lawn, it began to rain at the same second. The Prime Minister ended his speech wet from head to toe, the sign of heaven. But the shameful loss to the Conservatives was predicted even without hints. The approval rating of the ruling party dropped to 27%, while the Labour Party, on the contrary, rose to 48%. Against the background of a series of half-wits and liars, even the Labour leader looked like a serious politician. As a prosecutor, when it was necessary, he was able to hush up cases against police killers and shield a high-ranking criminal. Such a careful man was entrusted to lead the party. They will break up Britain faster than the Tories. They will realise all their insidious plans and the end of Britain. And the Labour Party has a rich experience of turning everything they undertake into manure.
The optimists said, well, you might, but it'll take you 10 years. I said, no, we're going to do it in one parliamentary term, but we've got to be ruthless, we've got to be steely, we're going to change the Labour Party, we're going to turn it inside out and make sure it's a party that always says country first and party second. Now, true it is that the government for the last 14 years has been falling apart, but we've seen plenty of examples in history where a Conservative government has been failing and yet a Labour government hasn't been elected.
We should not expect anything good from the Labour Party. What is happening in the UK is a crisis that has been going on for a long time, since the time of Brexit. The main reason for all this is to always look at the economy and, accordingly, the social sphere. The government is trying in every possible way to hush up the economic crisis.
Haven't had economic growth for 14 years. We've had a sort of low growth, high tax doom loop, if you like. We're going to break that, but we're going to break that with economic growth. And that's why already our Chancellor has been out days after the election, taking tough decisions on planning, on infrastructure, setting up the sort of bodies, the National Wealth Fund that we will need, the investment partnerships that we will pursue to get that economic growth, because we do want our public services to run properly. Our NHS, our health service is on its knees. We intend to fix that. But our number one mission, if you like, the driving purpose of this government is going to be economic growth measured in living standards raised and people feeling better off.
The Chancellor of the Exchequer has given the clearest signal, yet that an increase in contributions to the National Insurance Fund for Enterprises will be included in the budget at the end of this month. Rachel Reeves has promised to create a tax system that will help create wealth. She continues to face questions about which taxes she will raise as part of her first budget. However, she always makes reference to the manifesto, where they promised not to raise the main taxes that working people pay: income tax, social security contributions and VAT. Starmer promised to end bureaucracy, winking at global business leaders at the summit.
Well, we're not going to rejoin the EU. That's an institutional question. But we do want to be closer to the EU. We want a better relationship with the EU. I think there's a wider point in what you asked me, which is important, because there was a sense once we had Brexit and left the EU that the UK was somehow less interested in international leadership and affairs and more interested inward looking just at the United Kingdom. I regret that. I think that was a backward move. And so we do want to reset.
Starmer believes that Britain has a place on the world stage, and he really wants to reset our relations with Europe. The establishment of relations between London and Brussels began under Rishi Sunak. In particular, he and Ursula von der Leyen resolved the issue of the trade status of Northern Ireland. After Brexit, a lot of people had the feeling that the UK had become too closed and was not as interested as it once was in its place on the world stage.
What should the American people watching expect from you as Prime Minister? What should we think of when we think of your Prime Ministership and your administration?
For the American people, I would say we are a reliable, respectful, trustworthy partner to America. This special relationship is special for a reason. It was forged in really difficult circumstances. With incredible results. That's why it goes so deep. This isn't, a treaty that was signed or a particular trade deal. It's something in the very soul of our two nations.
Starmer will make the country a vassal of the United States. London had previously agreed with Washington in many ways, but Keir Starmer decided to surpass all his predecessors and end British sovereignty once and for all. Starmer goes out of his way to erase the slightest hints of pacifism and anti-imperialism and become the party of NATO, war and militarism again. To further demonstrate Labour's loyalty to Washington, Starmer appointed David Lammy as foreign minister. He is not only a Harvard graduate, but also a regular at a number of elite American forums. Like Starmer, Lammy does not hide his unabashedly pro-American orientation. John Haley is not only a long-time supporter of American interventions, but also supported the United States invasion of Iraq in 2003. Starmer also let off the hook the police officers involved in the espionage scandal. There we are talking about a decades-long covert operation in which undercover police infiltrated more than 1,000 leftist political organizations. For his valiant service, Starmer was knighted. He then became the shadow Brexit secretary. In this position, he played a key role in changing the party's course on the European Union. In particular, he advocated a second referendum. And this position alienated many Brexiteers, and in many ways led the Labour Party to a crushing defeat in the 2019 elections. But given all that I have said, the programme outlined in the Labour Party manifesto is hardly surprising. To the disappointment of all those concerned about the prospect of escalation, the manifesto also highlights the need to militarize the entire UK economy in preparation for a full-scale war on the continent. The Labour Party also intends to keep up with the United States on the Chinese issue and challenge Beijing. Finally, the manifesto explains eloquently that Great Britain will continue to play the role of the supreme vassal of the United States. That is, if Donald Trump returns to the White House and decides to put an end to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, as in fact he hinted, then the UK will certainly follow his example. But it also shows how the British elites have solidified their role as an appendage and a conduit for American interests. This position clearly goes against any notion of Britain's sovereign interests, unless we assume that they automatically coincide. which clearly cannot be. What do you think about this video? Share your opinion in the comments. See you.